Good afternoon, everyone. Is that good, Heidi? Good. I'm Karen Alschuler, and with Stacy Passman, we're the co-chairs of Social Action Committee at Sherith Israel. It's an incredible opportunity to work with so many of you that are sitting in the room and hope others in the future. So I have just a few minutes to open. We'll have a reflection by George, and then I'll tell you just a bit about where we've come from so we can focus today on Hamotzi and the connection to Compass. So kind of three parts, but I'll start with the intros first. I want to thank the committee that worked on this. I want to thank the committee that were, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Okay. Good afternoon. So you heard Karen Alschuler, Stacy Passman, and then the committee, if you want to raise your hands, Janet and Leslie and Evie and Evelyn. We always have an Evie and an Evelyn and Carol, the committee. Well, Nancy was on the committee for this meeting, and Makiko, who spread out all around. And thank you so much. A lot of thought and much heart and commitment was behind the idea of having this as our subject and having our wonderful speaker. So one person you haven't met yet in the room is Erica Kisch, and Janet will be introducing her in a few minutes. I'll start with an introduction, no introduction needed, for George Altschuler. No relation, but somewhere way back, maybe. We think it could be. He's our assistant rabbi, a father, a bard, a deep thinker of wide interests, and a great friend to social action. He's with us each time we meet and gives us inspiration. There's much discussion about it when we have that time in the committee. So for inspiration and his example, working in the night ministry, if you don't know what that is, you can ask about that afterwards. We're open. We're very interested in how to start, what to reflect on.
Thank you so much, Karen. So when I've volunteered at Hamotzi myself, I've often thought about our stained glass window, not the Moses half-dome one, but the other one that has the verse from Isaiah, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and shelter the homeless. And both Hamotzi and the Social Action Committee do such a wonderful job answering that call, from the work resettling migrants to climate action work to democracy work to getting hands, hopefully not dirty, but at least busy, preparing food. When I've volunteered at Hamotzi, I've also wanted to know more about what happens to the food that we prepare. So this afternoon, we have this wonderful opportunity to learn about the broader context of social justice in the community in our city, and also to hear a little bit about an organization that receives some of the work that I know many people in this room do for putting meals together for Hamotzi. So I quoted those verses from Isaiah, and then in our tradition, there's also a big emphasis on the importance of shelter. And from the morning liturgy, there's the prayer Matovu that many of us know. Matovu ochalecha Adonai mishkanotecha Israel. How beautiful are your tents, Yaakov, your dwelling place, your dwelling palace, Israel. So I found an adaptation of Matovu by Rabbi Chaim Stern that I want to share with you all this morning, because I think it does a wonderful job tying together the idea of the need for shelter and also the social justice work that's so important to us. May the one whose spirit is with us in every righteous deed be with all who work for the good of humanity and bear the burdens of others, and who give bread to the hungry, who clothe the naked, and take the friendless into their homes. May the work of their hands endure, and may the seed they sow bring abundant harvest.
Thank you to George and to all of the clergy and the team here at Sherith Israel who've been very supportive of what we do in its parts of technology and spirit and other things. We appreciate that. So just to touch on three parts of what we're up to, and then get to the spotlight on the main subject of this afternoon's thinking and contemplation. We hope to have you share your thoughts and be thinking about this so we can all decide what is our path to action. In 2016 to 2018, the Social Action Committee, which had existed for quite a while, we've been training and doing a variety of work. We did a listening campaign. Many of you probably were part of that. We began to see the need to take more action in light of what was happening in San Francisco and around the country. And we went into full action. We did research. We looked at other congregations. We talked to other people who had social action and social justice goals. We came to the conclusion that we would support and bring to the Board of Trustees the idea of Sherith Israel to be a sanctuary congregation. They considered, we answered questions, gathered the information, and decided that they declared it was February 2018, to make Sherith Israel a sanctuary congregation, the first synagogue to do so in San Francisco. We began with a focus on immigrants and refugees. We went into action for justice in courtrooms, in the court of public opinion, doing advocacy, and with something called NEAT, a Nueva Esperanza accompaniment team, supported by the Interfaith Movement, where we work directly with immigrants. And in the process of doing this, to bring awareness of what we were doing and what other people could do in the congregation. So we supported immigrants and refugees, face legal issues, problems getting jobs still exists, issues of self-sufficiency, and of course, a quest for housing, which is still very much out of reach for a lot of the people who we help and come here. One being San Francisco. We found extraordinary partners to work with us from other agencies. And as I said, had the full support of clergy. In our work with individual families and their children, et cetera, we've supported 11 different families, and I think about almost 20 people in the course of 3 years since we've been doing the NEAT program. Then, really kind of in parallel and working at suggestion of the board, we began to see that we be stronger together. So of all the groups that are at work, and you heard a lot about them in the service, in the Torah readings today, we began to see how we really could be part of under one umbrella and working together with Chesed, with the Jewish Coalition for Literacy, with the voting rights people. There's quite a group within this synagogue that really have a good time writing postcards, and they're about to get to work again this year, supporting policy initiatives. And more recently, our new group created within the Social Action Committee for Climate Action, the Climate Action Team, taking on global and local issues and coming up with things that every person in the congregation can do. Oops. But in the spotlight today is Hamotzi, and the focus for 30 years, Nancy said earlier, from this next Shabbat, it's just exactly 30 years to be working on food insecurity and feeding unhoused people. And we've now merged with that also the support of immigrant groups who come, and Hamotzi and the team responds immediately. They arrive on a Thursday, they've got food on a Sunday. So it's an extraordinary contribution. I think, as many of you know, every Sunday for almost 30 years, a few days more, many people gather to shop, to prepare, and to deliver nutritious meals, and often to the Compass Family Shelter. So join us. 3 is just join us in thinking about what comes next, what you can do, and how we can meet some of these extraordinary goals that we see in our community and with the individuals that we help. So I'm going to introduce Janet to come up, Janet Parker, to come up to start the meat of this discussion. Janet is a person of heart, soul, humor, unbelievable energy, and outrage in the face of injustice. I'm sure you know that if you know Janet. Mwah.
Hi, I'm so happy that you're all here today. On another Yom Kippur, actually, it was 31 years ago today, not today, on a Yom Kippur, 31 years ago, On October 7th, 1992, our then Assistant Rabbi Alice Goldfinger made an impassioned call to action on behalf of the homeless and hungry people in our city. She challenged us to make and deliver hot meals to one of the downtown shelters. She said, "My friends, there are two fasts going on this Yom Kippur. Our fast, which will end at sundown as we munch on kugel with family and friends. But the fast of the homeless in our community will not end tonight or tomorrow night unless we do something about it." And we did. The first Sunday that my sons and I served dinner with the Hamotzi Project was on Super Bowl Sunday, 1993. We brought food prepared by Sherith Israel volunteers to the Compass Family Shelter on McAllister Street. During the meal, I remember that Evan, who was 6 years old, kibitzed with the sports fans around the TV set, while Daniel, then 10, played chess with some of the seniors. On subsequent Sundays, Daniel would play the piano, and Evan, who loved being the dessert server, played with the kids at the shelter. One time, we took about 30 kids and parents to the San Francisco Zoo. We met at McAllister Street and took the El Taravel for a day that included the insect and petting zoos, the playground, and lunch for everyone, all paid for, admission and food, by Sherith Israel. A couple of times, we read bedtime stories and gave out books at the shelter. At some point, I didn't really know why, we stopped having communal meals and started dropping off the food for individual families to pick up. But we never stopped bringing the food. Every Sunday for 30 years, and even during the dark days of COVID, the meals kept coming. Today, the Hamotzi team serves between 100 and 150 meals a week. We still deliver to the Compass Family Shelter and to a women's shelter, and have added home deliveries to some congregants and also to some migrant families whom the Social Action Committee has helped house. All of this takes an extraordinary number of dedicated Sherith Israel volunteers, starting with Nancy Sheftel Gomes and John Deller. John is now singing his heart out as part of the Kalenu choir, but Nancy, also in the choir and everything else, is still spearheading the program with her astonishing brains, heart, and grit. Upstairs, just this morning, the rabbi introduced Nancy as the grand poobah of Hamotzi. Over the course of any year, about 200 volunteers contribute by shopping, cooking, picking up donations, including fresh produce from the Green Gulch Farm, delivering and baking homemade cookies and mini challahs. Many, if not most of the people in the room, maybe all of the people in the room, have contributed your time and money to help Hamotzi thrive. Thank you. It all started with Yom Kippur and Rabbi Goldfinger. I had the absolute pleasure of speaking with the rabbi this past Friday. She now lives in Maine, and it meant so much to her to hear about the enormous impact she made and continues to make on so many lives, beginning all those Yom Kippurs ago. When we first started our partnership with the Compass Family Shelter, I mentioned that we had a relationship with the residents and got to exchange stories over shared meals. Now, since we drop off the food, we really don't have an opportunity to get to know the people who live there. So I'm especially glad to be able to introduce Erica Kisch, the CEO of Compass Family Services, who will give us more of a sense of what they and of the people whose lives are impacted. I'd like to read a little bit about Erica. Erica Kisch became the Chief Executive Officer of the Compass Family Services in 22, where she is responsible for the overall functioning of the organization and for ensuring that the organization's strategic and financial goals are met. Prior to moving into that role, she managed Compass Shelter Program, then the Compass Family Center, for 8 years, before which she provided clinical services to homeless and at-risk youth in a number of settings. She holds an MSW from UC Berkeley and has been a licensed clinical social worker since 1993. Please help me welcome Erica Kisch.
Good afternoon, everyone. Shana Tova. I'm very honored to be here and to have been invited to speak with you on this very special day. In addition to the connection with Hamotzi, I have special feelings coming here because my daughter, who is now 25, attended preschool here when she was little, starting from age 2. And while I've only been with Compass Family Services since 1995, so it'll be 29 years in 2 weeks, I've worked with Hamotzi, all those 29 years, and it's kind of amazing that 29 years, but Hamotzi's been around longer than that, almost 32 years. It's really amazing. And, I did start my first 8 years at Compass were running Compass Family Shelters, so I have intimate recollections of working with Hamotzi, receiving the meals on Sunday, providing them to the families. And while we've had 3 different sites for our shelter since 44 McAllister, the work continues. And as I'm sure you all can understand, it's needed more than ever. So we couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. And again, I'm honored to be here. So I have a little presentation, and I'm going to go through some slides if I can operate this little device. And then we're going to share, we have a little video that we showed at our benefit event last April that's very moving, and we want to share that with you, but I'm absolutely open to any questions or discussions. I know there was something about, well, where does the food go and what happens with the food? So I'm happy to speak in depth because I do have intimate knowledge more than any of our other programs of that program, our shelter program. So just to kick it off, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to walk you through just a little background. And again, we all know that homelessness in San Francisco, in the United States, is a huge, huge social issue and really has been for many years, but has gotten worse and worse and worse. And here in San Francisco, it's pretty striking just when you walk down the streets. So the people you see on the streets aren't the population that Compass serves. We serve families, which are kind of the more invisible population of homeless folks. And while we never want to say one population of homeless people is, more worthy of support and compassion than another, we do serve this less visible population, and you're much more likely to pass someone that's a parent or a family. Okay, thanks. You're much more likely to pass a family on the street and have no idea that they could be experiencing homelessness because, parents still have to hold it together and take care of their kids. So there are about 160,000 people in families, so parents and children, who are homeless in San Francisco, in the United States on a single night. And that was in 2022. And keep in mind that during the course of the COVID pandemic, numbers just got worse. Homelessness definitely became even bigger of an issue from pretty much, for at least from our perspective, from that first day of lockdown. The families that we serve started to really suffer and struggle intensively. Nationally, 1 in 4 people that are experiencing homelessness are in families. So their children, their parents,
their babies. And our experience is that the most typical family constellation is a single mother with 1 or 2 children under 5. But we serve all different configurations of families. It can be a couple, it can be even a grandma who's raising kids with multiple kids. It really, anyone who is homeless or at risk of homelessness is eligible for most of our services. And California, unfortunately, is home to 16% of the nation's homeless families. And the other thing about California that we're not proud of is that we have the largest number of folks that are homeless that are unsheltered by far. So in San Francisco, every 2 years, HUD requires what's called the point in time count. And that's where folks are asked to volunteer and service providers go out one night and literally count people that are homeless. Not very scientific, not very accurate, especially with families. So the last point in time count said that there were 205 homeless families, which is 605 people in San Francisco. However, in 2022, we served more than 6,000 homeless parents or at-risk homeless parents and children. Last year, fiscal year 2023, it was almost 1,000 more than that. So something is wrong with that math. Something's very wrong with that math. And when you think about that methodology, walking around the city looking for people that look like they're homeless, obviously, it's not the best. The school district does its own counts, but if you keep in mind that what I said earlier, that the most common configuration is a parent with children that are preschool age, they're younger than school age, those folks aren't even getting counted when the school district is counting. So if you hear a count from the school district, keep in mind, that's not counting families with kids that are younger. So 2022 school year, 2,342 homeless students. That's not their families, that's just the students. And then in fiscal year 2022, we assessed 1,045 families that were entering the homeless response system. And in addition to those families, there's a whole subsection of families that live in SRO hotels. A lot of those are in the Tenderloin, in Chinatown, in the Mission. And those families live in circumstances that really are not acceptable to raise children. Typically, it's one room. They don't have a kitchen. They don't have a private bathroom. A lot of the other, sorry, I'm trying to do this in a way that you can hear me. A lot of the other folks that are living in the hotel have a lot of issues, so it's not necessarily safe. And those families really have very little hope of getting out of that situation because they become the very lowest priority for services. Even though technically they're eligible for services, they're always at the very, very bottom of the priority list. So it's really, really hard to escape because their rents to stay in those hotel rooms, even though the hotel rooms are inadequate and are still so much that it's really hard to be able to get out of those circumstances. So let's see, I'm gonna try to, okay. Sorry, I'm not good with the slides and the talking. So I don't think I need to say this to you, but I always feel like I need to, this is something that I've said for years and years and years doing presentations. Homeless families, homeless parents, they want the very, very same thing for their children that you and I want for our children. They have the same goals, the same aspirations, the same dreams, but there's so many factors that get in the way, and so many challenges and so much adversity, that there's just a struggle for that to happen. But it's easy to say, well, if they tried harder, if they did this, they did that, but like really, parents love their children. All parents love their children. So at Compass Family Services, our mission is to help families that are homeless or at risk of homelessness in San Francisco to become stably housed, to achieve economic self-sufficiency, and also to become to achieve well-being, emotional and family well-being. We always say we believe every family needs a lease and a key, because homelessness is about housing, but a lot of the families we serve have other challenges that they're trying to overcome. Institutional racism, generations of poverty, a lot of trauma. The number of families that we're serving that are undocumented, that are coming across the border, fleeing terrifying, life-threatening situations, that might have been incarcerated at the border. So there are a lot of factors, and we try at Compass to deal with the housing, but also help to prevent the next generation from becoming homeless, break cycles, and help families to really thrive. Okay, so some of you are probably old-time San Franciscans. We used to be Travelers Aid, and you might remember, Heidi remembers because she was on the board when we were Travelers Aid. We became Compass Family Services in 1995, and we have been growing and growing and growing. Just this past year, the money from, if you voted for Prop C, thank you. The money really just kind of trickled down to be, enable us to put it into practice with programs and services. So we grew our budget pretty significantly with several new initiatives to help families from Prop C funds, with permanent subsidies, with hotel vouchers, and with other services that families need to stabilize. So I used to be able to talk about all of our programs really easily and you'd understand, but now we have so many, it would take me quite a while and you'd be completely lost and exhausted. But we have a whole range of programs and services, starting from the front end crisis to stability, and self-sufficiency. So we will, if a family is homeless, we will meet with them and try to figure out what they need, shelter, their immediate needs. Our optimum is to be able to prevent a family from becoming homeless in the first place, because once a family is homeless, it's a lot harder to stabilize. So we have a rental assistance program. We have all the kind of aspects of housing. So shelter, hotel vouchers, rapid rehousing, which means we pay a subsidy for families for a period of time and provide them with services so that they can stabilize. And now we have permanent subsidies for families. We have a permanent supportive housing program at 9th and Mission, which is about a year and a half old, which is very exciting. Then we have services to help strengthen families, a family resource center. We have a very large behavioral health program, and that's one of the things that we do that if we weren't doing it, nobody's doing it, or not for this population and not accessible. So our goal is when a family is in a crisis and needs mental health support, we can provide it right then and there and not tell them, here, we'll put you on a waiting list for 8 months. We know you're in crisis, just hang on, and we'll call you when we have, someone to work with you. Our goal is always what we call therapy on demand, to be able to provide that right then and there. Then we provide early childhood education, and all sorts of other support services to deal with all the aspects of a family situation. So our approach, so comprehensive care is what I was just talking about, trying to really address all of the aspects that contribute to a family's instability and homelessness. By client-centered, we mean that, it's all about the family, and every family is different. Every family is unique. Every person is unique. And we want to be able to harness the strengths that every individual has, no matter how difficult their situation, and work with them to create a partnership so that we can empower them to move forward. Our goal-driven programs, I mentioned a little bit about our programs, and we have become, over the past, I don't know, I'd say 8 years or so, super data-driven. So, we have all sorts of measurements to make sure that what we're doing is the right thing and that we're using the resources that we've been entrusted with in a way that is the most helpful for families. And then trauma-informed refers to a practice where you acknowledge that every single thing that you do for when a family makes contact with you is potentially reparative or can be damaging. So that means like when a family first walks in the door, in crisis, you want to make sure they feel safe, they feel welcome. You want to make sure the janitor in the shelter who they ask for toilet paper is kind. Everyone across the organization needs to be trained to be trauma informed. So this is a little graphic of our programs that's become more and more complex. I can highlight the star that 96% of families who complete our housing programs remain stably housed. And again, we kind of do everything. So this is our impact actually from fiscal year 2022. So the numbers are actually even higher now. So it's almost 1,000 more parents and children than the 6,500 that we served in fiscal year 2023. And then, you know, thinking again about, well, how many families are there? 46% of the families we served in 2022 were new to Compass. So we do work with plenty of families for a number of years. You know, the trauma that a lot of our families face is so deep and took so many years to establish. Sometimes it takes a number of years to really address and help folks to stabilize. We provided 650 families with drop-in services at our Grove Street Service Hub. During COVID, we had hundreds of families lining up and waiting for things like food and diapers. And our service hub was actually like, it was like the walls were made out of diapers, and we looked like you could have walked in and thought that you were at the food bank. But that a lot of that was thanks to amazing generosity from the community during, you know, obviously a very terrible time. And we rely on volunteers like you, 10,000 hours of volunteers that year to support families. So you're a part of that. We couldn't do it without you. The "it takes a village" cliche is definitely real. Hygiene kits, it's just, you know, one of the things that families need, or they need soap and toilet paper and shampoo, and maybe not as much anymore, but like folks used to travel for business all the time and give us their toiletries. So if you ever still do that, we'll take them. Okay, so how to make an impact. You all are already making an impact. Some other things that are going on at Compass and opportunities include, we have a holiday adopt a family program that we've been running for many, many years. It's pretty huge. We wind up adopting almost 500 families, and that's individuals, companies, families, groups of friends who get together and meet holiday wishes of like things kids want and things families need. We run it in this very kind of industrial way, so it's very well organized, and it's a way that folks can do something directly for families, which is something that people are often looking for. Our spring benefit is in the spring, obviously. That's our major fundraiser. We're in the middle of back to school drives right now. We get backpacks and school supplies from all sorts of groups so that we can give these to all of the children that come through our services. We have a graduation for our preschool in August or end of July, and that is really a very sweet thing. And then just general opportunities, like I said, hygiene kits, hosting hygiene drives, individual or group volunteer projects of whatever nature. Everybody has their own kind of things that they're interested in. People have skills that they can share with our teams. And then fundraising, obviously. And right now, we're in the middle of collecting costumes for kids, because it's almost Halloween. So if you're interested in donating costumes, we will gladly take them. And Adopt a Family registration opened September 15th. And then upcoming is Compass Family Day, and that's actually here. This is our second year that we'll be putting on this event, and it will be hosted at Sherith Israel, which is really wonderful. You know, we always have folks in the community who want to involve their children, and we absolutely want to support that for lots of reasons. You know, we need all the help, but also You can't be too young to start learning to give and to be kind and to be caring. So we have this family event that we will be hosting in November. And we have, this is our junior committee. Very cute. So that is that.
This is my mama. My little brother was still her tummy. I was 2, now I'm 5. That's Jackie from Compass. Tree helper is the fun house, so we don't have to sweep our car again. First house was real bugs, and it's so funny. The next house was perfect. Lots of other people liked it too. Here's Jackie caught us after talk to the agent.
Hi, Patricia. Are you ready for the information that I have?
Yeah.
You got the place in Vallejo. I promise. I just got off the phone with him like 32 seconds ago. You got the place in Vallejo. You got it. He's sending me over. I promise. He's.
Oh my God, you're not playing with me right now.
It was like an unexplainable feeling because, you know, and just after everything between foster care, you know, the abuse, mom being on drugs, not having a dad, no protection, all the neglect, just being cold, being hungry. After all that, to just finally come to a point to where I have my peace, you know, or I could start, you know, my own foundation for me and my kids, you know. It was beautiful. I just feel like my struggle had ended at that point. Like I felt like I could finally breathe.
What I love most about my job is that it doesn't feel like work. Every day isn't my favorite, don't get me wrong. Every day is not my favorite, but every day is a good day. I know that, you know, a smile is infectious, you know, and that attitudes are contagious. I've been a bartender, a taxi cab driver, customer service representative, library aide, personal assistant, you name it. It's shaped who I am today. It's given me the ability to speak the language of kindness. And as the housing coordinator, I help families who are struggling with housing find housing, help them navigate the housing system.
What I remember most about being a little girl is just having to be stronger than a child needs to be. I had to worry about what I was going to eat for the night or where I was going to sleep. So I remember mainly that and like yearning for my mother, for protection and love.
When I first met Patricia, I didn't know that she had the grit that she has. My first thought was, wow, she's young. She had a 2-year-old and she was also pregnant. She had been sleeping in a Cadillac and it had all her things in. She needs help. So I made it my business to help Patricia get housed.
I always have this determination that everything will be okay. When it was super cold, you know, I would have to wrap my baby up in the back seat and put a lot of clothes on top of her just to keep her warm. I just went into survival mode. I met Miss Jackie and I just did everything they asked. It's been like blessings on top of blessings from there. It's more than just a job for her. She actually, what she does it from her heart. I don't think her day is truly fulfilled unless she's like put 110% into every case. They threw me a baby shower. They also supplied like furniture for my first move-in, diapers or anything for the kids, clothing, therapy if needed. You just have to, of course, voice it, whatever your concern is or what you may need. And then they'll, like if Compass doesn't have it, they'll find someone who does.
The future holds everything for Patricia. I'm excited for not just her, but also for her kids, because she's an amazing mom. She's exactly the person she wanted in her corner when she was a kid. Every child needs that kind of mom who would just go to the end for them.
It's been about 4 years now. I do caregiving, a little bit of security, food delivery. I was able to go back to school for my degree. Well, my major is psychology, and I chose that because part of what I want to do is help youth that went through what I went through. I'm just grateful for Compass.
I mean, it's the one-stop shop. We don't just do one thing in housing. There's this whole myriad, this whole symphony of things that go on that keep our families housed, help them get sustainable so that they can follow their pursuit of happiness.
So Compass is a bunch of things. Compass is a lot of things, I feel like it's nurture, it's love, it's support. I think Compass is whatever you need them to be, as long as you're doing your part. I feel like I'm breaking the cycle when it comes to drug addiction and homelessness for my kids. I'm showing them something different. Putting my keys in the door, it just made me think this is our new beginning. It's just me and the kids.
I love my house. It's so comfy. I love my brother. I love my mom a lot.
Wow, that was really impactful. I want to thank Erica for coming and showing us what Compass does and giving us a sense of the need in the city and how and what we've been contributing to. I wanted to ask people to join me and Evie Pasmentier and Karen in joining us in talking about housing in the city and to work on housing issues. We have so many layers to our housing issues, from our community's questions about whether our kids could ever live here to other communities that have families that they're trying to house, to our immigrant population that we are always looking for housing for, to the future need of possibly a bus coming in with a bunch of immigrants and us immediately needing to house them, and looking at the 5 day, the 6 week, and the 3 to 6 month outlooks for those people, and trying to get ahead of some of those needs. So many, many layers to this. I'm hoping that more people will join us on this route. I worry every day whether my own kids will be able to live in the city. And hopefully everybody will, my kids will make enough to live here. And I feel like that the city could be doing a whole lot more to add housing. So join me. If anybody has any questions for Erica, we're going to pass around a microphone, because otherwise the people online can't hear you.
To be perfectly honest, so in San Francisco, and I don't know, maybe everywhere, there really is a division in terms of services provided to families, single adults, and TAY is kind of its own population, but there's the overlap of TAY that have children. And we actually, and TAY means transitional age youth, sorry. We actually just found out on Friday that we got some targeted funding that we applied for to specifically serve, and we already serve anyone who has a child is eligible for our services, and we serve plenty of these young families. But we got funding because we recognize that this is a population, a 19-year-old mom or even a 24-year-old mom has different needs than like a 40-year-old mom. Developmentally, they're in a different place. So we've always tried to really target our services to the needs of that particular family, but we just got funding, and this isn't for housing, but this is for services, because, you think about a teenager, And now they have a baby and they're trying to navigate the system and they just don't have the experience. So we want to be able to specialize for them. So we're excited about that. There has been, I think compared to the issue for the other populations, because there's good, strong organizations in San Francisco advocating and specializing in transitional age youth like Larkin Street and Huckleberry. There has been, I think, a lot of resources dedicated towards TAY, but not enough, definitely not enough. So, you think of a young person out there on their own, often has come from somewhere else where, it wasn't safe for them and it wasn't comfortable. And you want to make sure that they pretty quickly get the services they need so that they can thrive. But in terms of like the details of the housing, that's not our area. Our agency budget this year is 25 million, a little over. And that's a growth of 5 million from last year. And like I said, some of the initiatives funded by Prop C, particularly those permanent subsidy contracts, when you're subsidizing rent, that's a lot of money. And we kind of call that pass-through dollars. So 25 million is our budget. Our staff is about 160. And hiring folks in every sector these days, bringing in people who have the skills and the talents and want to work in person and not remote is a challenge. But we have 160 positions, hardworking folks doing all sorts of different jobs to keep the organization running. And our government funding sources, I think you asked also. So like 70% is government funding. Most of it's city and county of San Francisco, but we get some HUD funding, we get some state funding. Our early childhood education program has long had a contract with the California Department of Education. And then fundraising from individuals and events. We are, compared to a lot of other organizations in our space, we are very strong in terms of fundraising. And it's sort of that spiral of like, if you don't have the capacity to do fundraising, you can't get to have the capacity to do fundraising because you need the infrastructure. But we've kind of gotten there over the years. Not to say that we don't need funds, because we sure do. We always do. But we are good stewards of the funds that are donated to us. The most important thing is to make sure that they're safe. So there is too much separation between the services that are specifically addressing domestic violence and the family system. Although there is overlap, we do work together. But the most important immediate thing is making sure a family's safe. And that means going into a shelter in a confidential location versus our shelter, which is not a confidential location. There's also a lot of kind of gray area. Like we have families that come into our program and they might have been fleeing domestic violence, or there might be domestic violence while they're with us. So, what it boils down to in every situation is trying to make sure both the family and all the people around them, the staff and everyone else, the other residents, are safe. My experience with domestic violence programs, and I've worked closely with some of the ones that you've talked about, is they're very, very focused on the crisis of violence, which is understandable, but not enough on the longer term need of housing. And I think there is more that we could do as two sort of parallel and overlapping service provider sectors to kind of work more closely together. But those families, once they become deemed that they could, work or go into a shelter where there's not a risk, we get plenty of families where there is domestic violence, at some point in the history or the story. In our shelter, which is where Hamotzi delivers, families live there. It's, we have 22 rooms in that particular program. Each family has a private room with a private bathroom, which is, not a given in a homeless shelter. And the families are hopefully working really hard during the time that they are in shelter to secure housing, to deal with whatever the issues were that, led to the homeless experience in the first place. We have a pretty robust staff at our shelter that provide case management.
We have a children's activities coordinator and a dedicated children's space because we want to make sure that the kids, you focus on the kids because it's really easy in the crisis of the family to lose sight of that, the kids and their needs. So a dedicated safe space for the kids and someone who works just with the kids. The family might be in therapy. Like I said, we have a robust behavioral health program. So the family or members of the family could be in individual therapy, play therapy, couples therapy. And, sometimes families are working. For the most part, the parents that we serve are underemployed if they're employed. But we're working really hard with them from the minute they enter shelter to try to help them to stabilize. So it's kind of like that becomes their temporary home. And Sunday, they're there and preparing meals for themselves, the rest of the week in the kitchen and appreciating the meals that you all provide on Sunday. And in that movie that I just showed you, Jackie, the case manager, who is amazing, when that was filmed, she was working in another one of our programs, but now she's the assistant director at our shelter. So if you go there to drop off meals, you might see her. She's lovely. The first thing, okay, so yes, families we house them outside of San Francisco. And that's, kind of controversial because why shouldn't the families we serve get to live in San Francisco? A lot of them, were born and raised in San Francisco or Oakland or whatever. When I first started doing this work in 1995, we could always find someone like kind of not so great apartment in the Tenderloin. And Oakland and Berkeley were, sure. And then it became, Vallejo, further out, and further and further and further out. So it's really a challenge because that is the reality for many of the families we serve, but oftentimes they did grow up here. This is what they know. And you send families out to these communities that are more affordable, but they're more affordable. And at the same time, they have fewer resources. They don't have jobs. They don't have services. They don't necessarily have transportation. And we're trying to still work with them and provide them with support from afar. So it's a huge ethical issue. Because families are not able to live in San Francisco and certainly low income families, but it is a reality. One of the nice things about this newest set of contracts we got for permanent subsidies is that the subsidy amount is higher. So we're more able to house some of those families in San Francisco, whereas our other subsidy streams, it's more likely they wind up places like Vallejo. So that's your first question. Your second question was about something. Yeah. Yes. There was an article a couple of months ago. I don't know if you all saw it about yes, let's convert all these office buildings into housing, but it's not quite as simple as that because the way office buildings are designed, they don't necessarily have the plumbing, the ventilation and all that. Our program, the Margot, which is the one at 9th and Mission, it was a hotel that Project Home Key, which was created by the state during COVID, so that in order to increase housing, cities could buy these hotels from hotel owners who had no business. And so the city bought this hotel at 9th and Margot. It was called the Panoramic. It still has the big panoramic sign. And another hotel at 333 12th Street, both of which are housing at least some families and some single adults. And I'm looking at the Hilton thinking, okay, that's, I think, in receivership, and that's certainly a big place. So yes, yes. But there are some real challenges.
Right. It's not for compass. It's you're here for the first day of this list and for this effort that we're doing to gather some things that we've found we need every time a new immigrant family joins us through the NEED program or something else. So this is a Sherith Israel. I'm sure you have lists as well, and you follow your heart and give to wherever it's needed. But Janet has kindly agreed to keep some of these things so that we would have them on hand, because otherwise we're going,
We try to get housing for some immigrants. We do our best working with the Interfaith Movement and Faith in Action and other organizations. So the little things that we get from hotels, that's great. to go to the Compass shelter, we need like a big bottle of shampoo. The people are living there for like hopefully 3 to 6 months in a home. And although we'll take, those little giveaways from the hotels, we're looking for, like a big Ajax to clean the bathroom and stuff like that. So please look over the list. And we have, Chris and I have a big basement. We don't have a garage. So we have this basement that's enormous that will be able to, we can collect the stuff there. So anything on this list we'll be able to take. And with the little stuff, we'll give it over to Nancy to deliver on Sundays. So anything anybody can contribute will be used. Thank you.